I am Dr. Dan Augusto. Welcome to this session on aligning care to individual goals. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Dr. Dana Dillard. We are both faculty within the Department of Behavioral Sciences here at UAGC. Before you now is your presenters and panel. Deanna Randall is a human resources professional dedicated to elevating the employee experience and fostering an inclusive workplace culture. In her role as the Senior Director of Culture of Engagement for UAGC, she aims to create an environment where employees feel empowered to bring their authentic selves to work. Alexa Dunn is the Associate Director for Articulation and Prior Planning Assessment at UAGC. During her 10+ years at UAGC, she's actively sought to support culture of care, recognizing that culture is created by all participants regardless of positions. Willie Cross is the Director of Technical Resources and Support for UAGC IT. He began his career at Northern Arizona University and has sought progressive leadership roles throughout his career, from an analyst for the Liberal Arts College at NAU to his current role. Stephanie Kilby is a dedicated professional with over a decade of experience in higher education. Her current role is Director of Student Success. Stephanie is committed to enhancing the educational experience for students while ensuring that they not only succeed, but thrive in their academic pursuits. With that said, I am going to turn it over to y'all.
Thank you, Dan. So as Dan said, my name is Willie. I'll do a quick intro here before we get into the discussion. So our plan for today is to essentially have an open discussion between the four of us, but especially with everybody in attendance, about aligning cares to individual goals. Part of what we want to say here at the outset is that a big caveat is that this is not sort of outlining an official process or anything like that. It is really about just sort of exploring the ways that we can actively, day to day, align cares with individual goals. And ultimately, if there's something that comes down the line in terms of aligning those, aligning cares with individual goals as part of the process, great. But here today, we're really just wanting to have a discussion with everybody present to explore all of that exciting stuff. So I will actually now pass it to Alexa.
Hey everyone, thank you all for being here. My name's Alexa. Over the past 3 years especially, I have been tasked with really bringing up the articulation and prior learning assessment departments, helping the people who work in them and bringing up the resources that we use, the technology. And one of those things was taking a very intentional approach to creating our individual goals for my team and myself, and how we all wanted to pursue the things we wanted and to make sure we focused on the things that are important to us. So I'm really excited to be here and hope to be able to share some of that knowledge that I've gained. I will pass it over to Stephanie.
Thank you, Alexa. Before we jump in, I just want to share that the four of us are here mainly because we're part of Culture of Care Council, which has been an incredible experience. I've personally been able to be a part of Culture of Care since back when it was Power of One. But we've come together today to show that this really does have breadth across our entire university. And today we're going to talk about our pillars. We're going to talk about things that we might easily embody, some that we might struggle with. And I want to put that offer out there for all of you. Culture of Care Council is made up of people across the university. If you struggle with any of our pillars, if you have questions, thoughts, ideas, you're not sure how they're reflected in your daily role, and you don't know who is representing you on our council, feel free to reach out to any of the four of us. We can connect with you, talk with you, and get you to the person that's representation for you. So our email addresses are on our screen, so don't hesitate to reach out. Deanna?
Hi, everybody. I am Deanna Randall. Dan gave us a nice introduction, so thank you for that. Very excited to join Willie, Alexa, and Stephanie on the panel today. We've done a lot of work within the council to just help us, look at the future, how we can expand culture of care and really embed it into our culture beyond, faculty and staff. And so we're very excited for the summit. I think it's been we've had a great turnout so far. And so we're hoping to continue the momentum here. So as Stephanie said, we have a couple questions prepared that we're going to kick us off with, but as the conversation continues, if things come to mind, you have questions, or you would like us to dive deeper in any area, just please feel free to use the chat. We want to make sure to make this session as engaging as possible. So I will kick us off with our first question, and that is, how does culture of care show up in our goals?
So I was going to kind of jump in and be our first proxy answer here, to hopefully galvanize people. So, ultimately, I think, again, like kind of how I said at the beginning, we have guidelines, and actually Tiana does a ton of the work that supports, the goal setting process, everything in terms of, I guess what you call performance reviews at UAGC. And I think part of how it might also show up is actually to expand it a little bit and think about how you go about the goal setting process. If you're a supervisor, maybe how you're having conversations with your direct reports during the process of goal setting, just to see how stuff can be extracted about just like the day-to-day, and then those like long-term steps, thinking about the goal setting process, not as a sprint, but as a marathon, and integrating, thoughtful processes and ideas into, what we may sometimes think is like very individual things, but maybe expanding that out to maybe how the work that we do can, affect our team, whether it's communication, whatever else it might be, to just expand those ideas beyond what we sometimes can kind of have a narrow view on our goals. And then, of course, with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, having that be, as thoughtful as possible, which of course those goals can sometimes be just, I want to read this book that I heard about, or whatever it might be, but just participating in, or setting goals to participate in things with even bigger ideas beyond that. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else had any other thoughts. Definitely want to hear from the chat as well throughout this process.
That's great, Willie. I'd love to jump in too, because I was just telling Alexa a little bit ago that what has been great about this summit is that it's causing me to rethink things that I thought I already had the answer to, which is great. That's what it should do. We should be reflecting and learning and growing and adapting. And I will be the first to admit that I probably have not done the best yet in terms of connecting the culture of care pillars to my goals. I can look at my individual goals and say they're present, but it was organic. I know that respect shows up in the things that I do, clear communication. So they're there, the connections are there, but they're not intentional in the way that I believe I can do better. And so with the next goals I write, that will be what I focus on, is the intentionality behind it. Who are the other people impacted by the goals that I have? Am I engaging in them in a way that's respectful and showing care for their role? Am I intentionally putting the pillars in place in a way that will help me move myself forward, help our organization move forward? So there's something to be said about intentionality. Now, not all of us are in the same place, and that is okay, and that is how it will be, and that's perfectly fine. But what we should do is challenge ourselves each time to do just a little bit better, to take a different perspective, look at it in a different way. And so I would encourage everybody, as you think about your individual goals, consider, where does culture of care show up, and is it meaningful, and is it intentional?
I love that intentionality note. One of the things that I feel like I do have a little bit of a head start is that I did get to work with my team with sort of a clean slate. We all came together. There was nothing there for any of us, and we sat down and we actually created a mission, a vision, a purpose for articulation and PLA. And there was it was over a couple of team meetings, so it was probably 2 or 3 hours in total. And we really talked about, what was our purpose? Why were we even here? What were we doing? And for each of us as individuals, we absolutely recognize how valuable transfer credit can be, which is, my title is very fancy for transfer credit. And then when I was invited to the Culture of Care Council and was able to start working on these pillars, it was almost like we were taking this language, we were taking what we were doing and we were putting a common language around it to show and be able to have those conversations and be on the same wavelength. Because a lot of the stuff that we do in our daily work, and not just my team, but across the university, we already have been promoting communication. We do advocate for the adult learner, right? And we advocate for each other. We are here trying to be respectful as possible and modeling behaviors wherever we can. Having my team do that and having them really buy into what we were doing allowed us to, it empowered them to own what they're doing every day. And now I have this additional layer that I've been using with them of this language where that conversation can be back and forth. And it's not just about what they're doing, but also what am I doing? Can I advocate for them? Can I advocate for myself? Can I advocate for other departments to my team? And really tying those things back. The intentionality of it is going to be over the next few months as we come into our current review cycle, we'll be making sure that these words are used with that intentionality. So intentionality is such a great point.
I love the organic piece of it that Stephanie mentioned earlier. Willie also mentioned that my team is responsible for our performance management process at UAGC. And when we first started talking about the pillars in the Culture of Care Council and thinking through like how it already shows up in the day-to-day work that we're doing, I think that if each of us did that same exact exercise, you would be overwhelmingly surprised with how much it already is infused in our culture. Like Alexa said, we just didn't have that common language to be able to fluently describe the way that it shows up. I think too, when I'm thinking about how it shows up in my goals, I think a little bit broader too, like how does it show up in my personal life? What kind of friend am I? What kind of aunt am I? What kind of daughter am I? And I think that developing those traits outside of work helps you bring them and show up in your day-to-day operations within, the work environment. I also think that like I said, everything is already showing up in the work that you're doing, in the way that you're presenting yourselves. But there's always room for growth, right? So really taking a look at your goals that you have set right now, thinking about how those tie back to the pillars, and then finding those areas where it's like, yes, this does show up, but how can I fine tune it? How can I enhance in this area? I think that, again, we would just all be like mind blown at the way that it's already present. We just haven't put the framework or the language around it.
I think you mentioned how it shows up in your personal life as well. I think it is a pretty special thing for UAGC to be engaging in culture of care the way that we have. It's obviously changed, I think, in a lot of organizations in terms of like who you are at work versus who you are in your individual life. But to really lean into this initiative, even of course going so far as to putting the summit on is really kind of inviting people to be yourself at work, and even possibly envision the best version of yourself at work as well. Which I think is a really special thing, and not exactly historically how it's always worked at all the organizations that I've been a part of. Even I was actually going to go back though, Alexa. You kind of alluded to the process that you went through with your team, a little bit of just like of what you all did. I wonder if you could just give us like a high level overview, because that might be informative for people on the call to how they might want to go about this with their teams as well.
Yeah, essentially I did a SWOT analysis. I didn't call it a SWOT analysis. I didn't use strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. But I really sat down and the first thing we did was, why are we here and what are we doing? And I think that it was good for us all to ground ourselves in that mission and the purpose. And then it was to look at what was the ideal goal that we wanted for our students? What is the way that we can best do that for our students? What is holding us back from that? So one of the biggest thing that was holding us back was a technology situation. We were putting information in 3 different places. that is such a waste of time for my team. And we are small, we are mighty, but we cannot be wasting that time to do it in 3 places. And so from there, we came up with a list. We have a wish list, and this list is continuing, and we pull it out to look at everything we've completed, what's in progress, and we add stuff to it all the time. But we have a wish list of everything that we want to do as a department, and also sort of individually. We also have things on there for each of us as well. And from there, I was able to take that back and sort of prioritize, bring it back to the team and say, this is what I'm thinking. I'd like your thoughts. I have to do certain things first, and unfortunately as a leader, you sometimes have to make a decision on what, while you see value in more than one. But by doing that, it's really been able, and the conversation didn't stop after those 2 to 3 meetings. At least probably every quarter, we're looking at that file, or we're touching base on some of the bigger projects if we're in the middle of one. I love that my team comes to me with ideas, even from this 2 days. I've had them text me a few ideas in Teams, and I'm like, okay, we'll add it to our list, which is phenomenal. I really dislike a numerical goal. Like, if you have to hit 90% of X for your goal to get a 3, that gives you no leeway for if the university changes, if your position changes, it gives nothing. So our goals are very much in 3 different buckets. We have consistency of application, efficiencies and best practices, and then essentially marketing APLA to students. And within those buckets, we have a bunch of different ideas that they can use to then bring to that conversation and say, well, I didn't really work on this over this year, but at least I had these other 3 things that are within this category. So by doing that, that was where we've been able to have those more robust conversations. And my own goals, I share them they're on the shared drive, where basically the department can look at them. It's not just my team. And being open and honest about those. And then when they change, being open and honest about why they've changed, because they do occasionally change mid-year. So that was how we went about it. And I did learn some lessons on good things to go forwards, and I've definitely learned some lessons on where I could be a little more decisive or a little more open to feedback too, right? Because we're always growing. I wanted to throw out one of our second questions was, we've talked about, there's been a lot of love about this care and how much we're learning from this. I want to jump to the third question we have, which is which pillar do we feel we're lacking a little bit? And lacking does not mean that we don't do it, but maybe it's the one we least resonate with. So
I'd love to share on that one. And I'd love for people to share in the chat too. Which one do you struggle with? Because for me, I'm going to cheat a little bit, but question 2, which one resonates with me, is the same as which one I struggle with. And that one is respect. And respect, it almost sounds like a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't that be one that you just embody and embrace? And it should be. But I thought 2 things. One, several years ago when Dr. Beagle was here, and then again today, she reminded us that people should not have to prove that they are worthy of your care. And to me, that equates to respect. Respect people enough as human beings, respect their lived experiences, respect what they bring to the table. And so for me, that's a very powerful pillar, because it really brings in the human aspect of the people we work with and the students that we serve. Respect I struggle with, because for me, it's very fragile. We're all who we are because of our own experiences, and how I feel respect may not be how you feel respect. And so respect actually requires active engagement, listening with the intent to learn and to understand, creating a safe space for feedback, building trust. In a virtual environment where we're really reliant on written communication, short messaging, we know how easy it is to have a misstep, no matter how small or unintentional, and that can then erode your relationships. So when I think about my goals, I think about respect and how I need to write them in a way that's meaningful to me, but that's also respectful of the larger community. Other thoughts from my colleagues?
I'm happy to jump in and kind of go next. The one that I think initially I struggled with a little bit is student focus. And I know that sounds crazy, because it's like, what? We are a higher education institution, like our students are everything to us. But if you think about it a little bit more granular, we have teams that don't touch students, right? Like my department is HR. We are very employee focused. And so translating that, the work that we do into the bigger picture, yes, we are employee focused, but we support employees that directly touch students and impact students. And I think that as we continue to think about forward movement and how to roll this out and make this broader, we're going to start to have some of those conversations with departments that may struggle with that same pillar, where they're like, I work in technology, maybe I don't, touch students directly, but the work that you do contributes to the bigger picture, which is ultimately supporting all of our students.
I'll go really quick. I'm amazed that we already only have 5 minutes left. We said that it was going to go fast, and then of course it did go fast. So being in IT, I think, there's varying degrees of challenge, I think, at times. For me, being a leader in IT, with each and every one of the the CARES goals and everything, I think to some degree, I definitely resonate, I think, a little bit with what Stephanie said, and that's, that respect piece, because in IT, there's all kinds of different directions in terms of information, security considerations, all these different things that we try to keep at best as possible at the forefront of our heads, which are all very not really humanistic things. And when at the end of the day, really all I personally am in this business for, and I think a lot of other people are in this business for, is really just to help people. And it can be sometimes hard to get back to that kind of core, that center place where rather than thinking about all the things that either we're burdened with in terms of projects or tasks or technical considerations, it really just comes down to the people factor. And respect with oneself for sometimes, again, forgetting that stuff and not bringing necessarily our best selves to an interaction, and afterwards being like, oh, I wasn't great in that moment. I need to go kind of, ponder on that. But yeah.
We have that opportunity to model that behavior and say, I made a mistake. And how do I fix it? I might know how to fix a mistake I made, I might not, but it could be a mistake on data we've sent through. It could be a mistake in the words we've used in interaction. I know that I have picked up language from people that I find very inspirational in their meetings. And then I also am seeing my team pick up some of the language that I am intentionally using that I've picked up from other people as well. So it sort of becomes a circle. I wanted to take a quick moment. Some of the things in the chat, we've seen that language can be unifying, strengthen our culture. We can use it to celebrate. There was one just moved on me, static versus dynamic goals. Dynamic goals can be so much more encouraging, and it does allow our people to actually have that participation. Online communication is difficult. The verbal and nonverbals aren't there, so sometimes miscommunication happens. And if we all come to that, Dr. Bao said something in one of our session plannings, and she's like, change I bet to I wonder. Like, instead of I bet this is why they said this, or I bet they think this, I wonder why they said that, and I wonder why I'm reading their email that way. So a lot of good stuff in the chat.
I love that, Alexa. And I also love, I've heard changing I have to I get to. Like, I have to do all this work, or I'm fortunate enough to do all of this work. I'm fortunate that I have a job, like changing your mindset in that way too. And I think in a lot of ways, our culture of care really is a mindset, right? I think if you had to simplify it to the smallest degree, it's just being a good human, showing up the way that you want others to show up for you.
I think almost kind of on that same note, something that's kind of come through the Culture of Care Summit, but also just that has kind of bubbled up is obviously the use of mantra, the use of kind of repeating these phrases, changing language, and one of the things that I've started to do in switching kind of that, but also engaging with mantra is just saying thank you over and over to myself in different situations. And, going back to that respect piece, just kind of building that sort of core of love, of positivity where possible, and also reflecting it, of course, onto others on our teams or those that may report to us.
That gets to be a perfect segue for me to jump in and to share a ginormous thank you for this session. We have run out of time. I would like to give a big thank you to Deanna, Stephanie, Alexa, and Willie for their time and insights as we conclude this final session in our leadership supported care sessions. What an incredible couple of days. I hope you found this presentation just as inspiring as I did. I have goosebumps all up and down my arms right now. We have posted information for the final session in the chat for your benefit. And once again, on behalf of Dan and me and the Department of Behavioral Sciences and the University of Arizona Global Campus, thank you for your time, your engagement, your passion, and your care. Please have a great rest of your day.